part we don't get to hear is that when Jacob approaches and Esau is at a distance, Esau runs to him, weeping, and clasps him in his arms. And that's a really important part of the story to know. Because throughout his life, as we heard, Jacob understood blessing as something to be seized or taken from someone else in order to get something that he didn't have. He uses someone else's name, betraying his own twin brother time and time again, and then others later in life. And so Jacob bears the names thief, betrayer, liar, one who envies, one who uses trickery and coercion. These are all the names of Jacob. But he is returning now to the lands of his father because God won't let him go. And this is what climaxes in today's story. Because when he engages in the wrestling match, Jacob is asked by the man, "What is your name?" And finally, he says the truth. Jacob. That is the one who supplants. And who is it who is wrestling all night with Jacob? Well, some scholars suggest it could be Jacob's own conscience, or his guilt, or his guardian angel. Some have wondered, was it Jacob resisting what God was calling him to do? Or was it God trying to hold on to the Jacob who he loves? The text suggests that the man saw he couldn't get the best of Jacob, so he deliberately threw out his hip. But surely if it's God, Jacob could not best God. But God might have to stop wrestling if to go on would have been too harmful for Jacob. Some have suggested that the hip injury could be a symbol of how marked we all are by our battles of the Spirit. Certainly to survive a battle at all, we will each come back scarred and changed, the price of the fight. But I think it's pretty clear that Jacob is wrestling with his relationship with God, because if you look at the words, the person who wrestles with him says, "You will be called Israel because you've wrestled with God and you've come through." And Jacob answers that later by naming the spot Peniel, God's face, because he says, "I saw God face to face and lived to tell the story." The man and Jacob agree. Jacob has wrestled with God and come back changed. We will each have times in our lives, many multiple times perhaps, where we go through a defining transition, one that brings us further on the road to the person we are called to be. For some, it might be a huge battle of some kind. And for others, it might be many small daily battles with the same parts of ourselves that get in our way, right? It might be any time we meet our lesser self rather than our better self. The part of us that tries to hoard or hide. The part of ourselves that gives in to fear and desire. Rather than our better self, which is the one who can be brave and noble, who's more able to share and to love and to trust. And sometimes the battle is not with a lesser self, but actually with the true self. Who is the person inside you or me that is fighting to get out? Like Pastor Pam said, the artist, the singer, the lover, the dreamer. Perhaps the one who just hasn't been brave enough yet to emerge. And maybe there are ones that I haven't named that matter to you. But my friends, I can't help but bring into this all the headlines in our papers, which are calling names and giving names to people in our time. So many people who are wrestling with becoming who they are called to be in our world now, seeking to be called by their true names rather than the names they are given. People with names like refugee and undocumented, wrong skin color, wrong tribe, poor, orphan, prisoner, wrong religion, wrong gender expression, wrong sexual identity, when their true name is really neighbor, friend, family, equal, the wife of my daughter, the husband of my son, one who is home, one who is safe, one who is free, beloved, precious. How much easier is it to believe that we should send 5,000 U.S. military troops to the border when we're told that the Central American migrants coming are dangerous, terrorist, Middle Eastern extremist, gang members? Would our military fire on them believing this, even if who they really are is poor, homeless, in danger, victims, families, children? Can we stand by and let that happen? Please call me by my true name, the refugees call. White supremacists have been amping up their violence against people they call less, dangerous, undeserving. 2 Black American senior citizens are shot in a store in Louisville, Kentucky, because the white attacker couldn't get into their church. He tells another white man who confronted him, "Don't shoot me and I won't shoot you because whites don't kill whites." While another white attacker guns down 11 Jewish worshipers during Shabbat services at Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh last Saturday, most of whom were also senior citizens. And police report that the injured shooter keeps calling out, "All these Jews need to die." Please call us by our true names, Black church members call, and Jewish worshipers plead. With the report that the Department of Health and Human Services is working to narrow the definition of how a person's gender is determined to being only male or female, unchangeable, and determined by the genitals that a person is born with. That means that any person who is gender nonconforming, or transgender, or intersex is being targeted to be excluded completely, as if they don't exist, without even a bad name, without any identity at all. Our ballot question 3 is hoping to roll back a law already on our books that gives equal protection for transgender people, civil rights to be safe in all public places, just like I have. Please call me by my true name. Say our trans neighbors. As children of God, God calls to each one of us, be who you are born to be. Each one of you. Wrestle with whatever holds you back from being your best selves. God is saying, look at me. Look at me in the face, and you will live. Let me forgive you. Let me free you. Let me love you. Let me give you a new name, your true name. And I invite you now, you may stay seated, but we have a song, "I Will Change Your Name." It is in your bulletin. I invite you to find it. I will sing it once through, and then I invite you to join me as you are able. And I know the choir will help us.